The fireworks are coming a day early for some 5 stars, commitments, finalists, and decision dates. We have all the details. And speaking of decisions, 4-star EDGE Marquise Lightfoot is here to make his commitment live. Teams from the SEC, Big Ten, ACC, and current Pac-12 are all in the mix, so who will land him? Find out in minutes. And we're debuting a new segment where you get advice from the most qualified person that we know, the coach. Carl Reed is answering your biggest recruiting conundrums. Plus, a major announcement from us here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. All that and more as the college football recruiting show starts right now. Alongside Blair Angulo, I am Emily Proud. A reminder to submit your questions in the chat. We will answer them at the end of the show, but the only way you can be a part of the chat is by subscribing to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Also, a reminder to please like this video so we know that you're watching. Blair, we got a big commitment on today's show. I am so excited anytime we have a commitment, but this one is for 4-star EDGE Marquise Lightfoot. He's picking between Alabama, Illinois, Georgia, Miami, USC, and Ohio State. So as we're minutes away from this decision, how you feeling about this one?
I'm super excited. I'm on the edge of my seat. He's been playing this very close to the vest. He took some official visits in the month of June. This could be anyone's guess right now about where Marquise Lightfoot will be headed.
I don't know about you. I have no idea. So I'm looking forward to learning where he is headed here in just a couple minutes. But before we get there, let's go ahead and hit some headlines. One less 5-star is uncommitted. Defensive lineman Justin Scott has committed to Ohio State. A bit of a surprise picking the Buckeyes despite crystal balls leaning elsewhere. Blair, what happened here?
Emily, chalk this one up for persistence and planning. We often talk about jostling for positioning before scheduling those official visits, making sure you're either first or you're last. Ohio State got the last and final official visit in the month of June, and now Justin Scott is bound for Columbus.
Got that final impression. Meanwhile, a final 5 for a 5-star. Texas native Terry Bussey has narrowed it down to a pair of in-state schools, Texas and Texas A&M, as well as Alabama, LSU, and Oklahoma. What kind of talent are these schools fighting for?
One of the best athletes in the country. He runs a sub-11 100 meters. He's a multi-sport star who thrives in track and field and also on the basketball court as well. So on the football field, Bussey isn't the biggest prospect, but he plays really big and should make one of these schools very, very happy with his commitment.
Looking forward to seeing where he lands. Keeping up the 5-star theme here, the #1 safety in the class, KJ Bolden, has set a commitment date. He will make his decision on Saturday, August the 5th. Georgia currently leads the crystal ball with a month or so to go. So let's get some more info about this big decision and hit the Wiltfong whip around with our director of recruiting, Steve Wiltfong. Steve, in the month of June, Bolden took officials to Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, also went to Florida State. You can't rule out Auburn in this one either. So have one of those, you have one of those Georgia crystal balls. So where's your confidence level in the Dogs ahead of this decision?
Well, I'm confident that Georgia is one of the major players in this recruitment, but I think that they have some major company at the top of the list. The official visit to Ohio State the weekend of June 16th was a major needle mover in that recruitment. And he's very familiar with Ohio State. He visited twice during the fall for their win over Notre Dame and then returned later in the year and has a great relationship with Perry Eliano over there. Coach Day on his official visit spent time with Chase Young. He said he got some advice from Chase Young that will apply to his everyday life. Ohio State's got a lot of momentum on the recruiting trail right now. KJ Bolden, there's people that spent time with him that think he'll ultimately end up at Ohio State. But Georgia, definitely still in the thick of that one. That's where my crystal ball remains as we talk about it here. Auburn's going to get a visit here at the end of July. They kind of surged into this recruitment with a couple visits in the spring, including Auburn's spring game. And then Alabama, that was his last official visit. He said in the past, Bama's legendary. You're always going to get the best coaching. Who wouldn't want to play under Coach Nick and he said in the past as well. So the schools I'm looking the hardest at right now, you got Georgia, you got Ohio State, Then you got Alabama in there, and then Auburn getting a visit in July before he announces his college decision. So still some runway in this recruitment with the decision date and the finish line in sight.
Steve, let's stick with Georgia. You crystal balled a couple of top 24/7 offensive linemen to the Bulldogs recently, Marquis Easley and Daniel Calhoun. You also have a crystal ball out for Nair Daniels to go to Georgia. What's your confidence level for these three prospects ultimately ending up in Athens?
Well, Georgia, the nation's #1 ranked recruiting class right now, just had a big recruiting win, landing Michael Luini at the position, a guy we thought at one point was heading to Michigan. Now in Athens, Georgia in position to sign one of the best offensive line classes in the country. I like where they stand with all three of these guys, all set to come off the board in the near future. Daniel Calhoun, I think most of this process, it was Georgia and Alabama at the top of his list. Also looked hard at Tennessee and Texas and Auburn, but loved Georgia there. Marquis Easley made the rounds, but I think his official visit the second weekend of June alongside Daniel Calhoun was a tone setter in that one. Loved Georgia there. And then Nair Daniels, who also took his official visits to Florida State and Rutgers. I think that he ultimately is Georgia bound too. It's going to be a big, physical, massive offensive line class for Georgia this cycle. I like where they stand with all three of these guys, and I think that'd be a heck of a finish for them at the point of attack this cycle.
And your crystal ball put in some overtime this weekend. You also put one in for Texas to land the #7 player in 2024 in 5-star wide receiver Ryan Wingo. So what is it that have you leaning Longhorns for one of the top uncommitted prospects?
Yeah, so this recruitment's obviously had some movement at the top of the board. We've liked Tennessee. We've liked Georgia. Now we like Texas. He took his official visits in June to Georgia, Michigan, Texas, and Missouri. And I think his experience in Austin, getting a chance to sit down with Coach Sarkisian and Coach Jackson and that staff, seeing the offense, seeing the success that quarterbacks and receivers have had under Coach Sarkisian, and then just the time spent in Texas. It was his second time on campus. I think as this process continues, that program is the bar moving forward. He also had a really good visit to Missouri, so I would put Missouri in the 2 slot right now, but he's going to be back at Tennessee in July. They're certainly still very much in the thick of this. He's going to go down to Texas A&M in July. He may even get over to Kansas State, and he's going to take some officials in the fall, so still some runway to go here, but Texas setting the pace right now in the recruitment of Ryan Wingo. They're in great shape for a lot of 5 stars. Colin Simmons, as well, Terry Bussey, as you talked about at the top, Kobe Black. So Texas, 2 top 5 classes in a row, in good spot right now to add Ryan Wingo this cycle.
Steve, we know you have the spatula prop. We might need to get you a crystal ball as well with how many you've been flowing out there. You and Brian Doan teamed up to put a crystal ball in for Ohio State to land 5-star edge Dylan Stewart, and this is a huge recruitment, and Ohio State and the Buckeyes continue to surge there. What gives you confidence in that crystal ball prediction?
Well, talking to several sources with knowledge of this recruitment, including people that he spent time with at Ohio State the weekend of June 16th, it sounds like Ohio State is in phenomenal position for Dylan Stewart. Him and his mom both like Larry Johnson. They like the track record of the program. Spent some time talking with Chase Young on his visit. But a question that he had with Ohio State was, how are they going to use me on his official visit? They were able to explain he's going to be a stand-up outside guy, someone that could be a difference maker for them coming off the edge in that fashion. And so I think he really likes what Ohio State's doing schematically. But look, just because the prediction's on Ohio State right now, as the Buckeyes are in the thick of it to maybe unseat Georgia for the #1 class. Now, they need some things to go their way, but they are in the mix for that. South Carolina very much in the mix for Dylan Stewart as well. Took his official the weekend of June 23rd. He's expected back at South Carolina at the end of July for their big recruiting event. So still a lot of time here in the Dylan Stewart sweepstakes. Perhaps Miami's not going to go away there. Alabama and Maryland rounding out the top 5. But my crystal ball is on Ohio State. So's Brian Doan's. But we are definitely not ruling out South Carolina as his process continues.
And Steve, the chat is going nuts with all of these crystal balls. We actually have a question here. Once again, you cannot be a part of the chat unless you subscribe to the channel. Highly recommend it. Also, yep, you see it there. Hit that like button if you have not already. I'm going to ask you a question here. This one comes from Moto. Do the Buckeyes pull Dylan Stewart out of Georgia, or does Dylan Raiola pull him to Georgia? I know you talked a little bit about you throwing the crystal ball out for the Buckeyes there, but where do you like kind of the Buford connection here between these two prospects?
So is he asking about Edric Houston, the defensive lineman from Buford? I think that's who he meant, right?
Yeah.
Which we like Ohio State for Edric Houston. We have an article on 24/7 Sports right now talking about the Buckeyes' roadway to perhaps finishing with the #1 class. He's one of the crystal balls that I'm very confident in right now. I think Ohio State is the one to beat for Edric Houston. They got a great shot at his teammate KJ Bolden. We have them crystal balled for Dylan Stewart right now, the 5-star edge rusher. But again, we're not sleeping on South Carolina there, and Miami's certainly not going to go away. But Edric Houston, he's got an announcement in August. We like Ohio State there to land him as they put together what is going to be maybe the best defensive line class in the country, winning out for Justin Scott. Great spot for Dylan Stewart. Get Edric Houston. Maybe Marquis Lightfoot at the end of the show. I know we're going to talk about him shortly. But Ohio State, they're putting together a heck of a haul, and I like them for Edric Houston.
All right, before we get to Lightfoot, I got to ask about the 3-star cornerback, Amari Sanders. He hasn't taken an official visit since his June visit to Nebraska. That's also where the crystal balls favor for him to land. But you've actually reported that he's eyeing a couple of trips potentially during the month of July. What's the latest with his recruitment?
Well, I just think that Matt Rule, Evan Cooper, and that Nebraska staff set the tone in this recruitment the first weekend of June with his official visit. He gushed about it, getting around the other recruits. He's really clicked with guys like Ja'Cory Barney, who picked Nebraska over Miami this week. Mario Buford, some of the guys in the class, he's really hit it off with. He talked about the standard of that program and the environment around Lincoln and the opportunities that town presents to their football players. All those things have set the tone in this recruitment. And then he has relationships with guys that are already on the team from the state of Florida. So I think he's very comfortable there. He is a priority top target for Nebraska. So Matt Rule and company are recruiting. He's a 5-star on their board. And so I think it's up to another program to change where that recruitment stands right now. Nebraska, they got one of the top recruiting classes in the country right now. And this is another guy that they would love to add to a haul that ranks number 14 nationally per 24/7 Sports.
Steve, there were nearly 500 commitments during the month of June. We've got 2 more coming up here on the show in a few minutes. Marquis Lightfoot, the 4-star defensive end, and as well as Elijah Rushing later this week. What is your read on these 2 recruitments as they approach the finish line?
Well, Blair, I'm going to talk about Lightfoot first because I want you to chime in on Rushing because you're an expert close to that one. But for Lightfoot, we loved Ohio State coming out of his official visit there earlier this month. They had to get through official visits to USC, Illinois, and then Miami on the back end. And there was even some chatter coming out of those visits to USC and Illinois that maybe you shouldn't feel great about that Ohio State prediction. But Miami was a program that he fell in love with on a visit before his official visit. Jason Taylor, the opportunity to learn under Coach Taylor, a program on the rise under Coach Cristobal, who's got a track record for turning programs around. Allen Trieu and I have been working this story the last couple days, and the intel now favors the Hurricanes, who got the last official visit to land Marquis Lightfoot when he announces on the show later in the day. Miami defensive line is their biggest focus here this cycle, and Marquis Lightfoot is one of the most coveted players on their board, regardless of position. You see the 122 tackles, 9 sacks, forced fumble. He's a relentless, athletic, high upside football player with a lot of developmental upside physically. And then with Elijah Rushing, he's committing next Monday. He's committing on the 6th. Like Oregon there, Blair, we've heard some Arizona stuff, Arizona hanging around in that recruitment. And maybe there's been times where they felt good around that program. But the buzz still favors Oregon, in my opinion, as the Ducks try and continue with the top 10 class here. Where do you stand on Elijah Rushing?
A fascinating recruitment, Steve. He obviously took official visits during the month of June, made it out to Tennessee to wrap things up, also hit it to Notre Dame. This does have the feel of a West Coast recruiting battle between those 2 schools that you mentioned. And, the thing is that Arizona needs a win like this. Oregon needs a win like this. I think he's such an important and pivotal prospect for all these schools, and that's what's made this a really fascinating one to monitor here over the last couple months. But I'm excited to see where he goes because this could be a huge domino. We talk a lot about the quarterback dominoes, but this could be a really, really impactful dominoing when it comes to those edge rushers out west and nationally as well.
Yeah, looking forward to bringing you his commitment on Thursday. Steve, thank you as always for the great intel. Here it is, Elijah Rushing. We will bring you his live commitment. The 5-star Edge is the number 8 player in the class. The Arizona kid will choose between Oregon, Arizona, Tennessee, and Notre Dame. Join us on Thursday's show at 5 o'clock Eastern to find out where Elijah Rushing is headed. All right, we got some big news to tell you today. Over the weekend, we officially hit 100,000 subscribers on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. I'm trying to get this open, see if it works. Maybe we're just there we go. This is tougher than it looks. We do want to celebrate it because so many people have worked very hard to get us here. But ultimately, guys, this is you. You did this. We are just about a year old on this channel. We have launched numerous shows, including this one. We brought you all-day marathons of signing day and transfer portal coverage, but we could not have done any of it without you who hit that subscribe button. I know I've asked you for it a million times in the last year, so a huge thank you for watching, for commenting, for liking, and putting up with us, Blair. I mean, I gotta say it, this is just the beginning, right?
Yeah, this has been a journey, right? This whole year and having this show, but we're just getting started. It's become and it's I think turned into a destination for a lot of fans and a lot of recruits. I mean, we have some big time announcements coming up, and we're not going to slow down as the season approaches. And yeah, I gotta bring out some more confetti because it's definitely worthy of celebration.
Your confetti is way cooler than mine. Yours is from the national championship. Mine is from Party City, I believe.
It is from SoFi Stadium, Georgia, TCU, where I was. I managed to snag some confetti as I walked out. So this was Kirby Smart's doing, Emily.
I love it. A reminder, we have tons of new content launching this upcoming season that you're not going to want to miss. So if you're already subscribed, 100,000 of you and counting have already done it. But be sure to do so. Look, more confetti. This is fantastic. I have so many people that I want to thank. Massive thank you to all the people that you do not see that make this channel happen. You got our YouTube pro, Aaron Grisham, our producers, Chris, Kenny, Jesse, and Sanlay, all of our wonderful PAs, our director of research, Ryan. He's the one that's always dropping some great nuggets in the chat, and our fearless leader, Adam Stanko. Thank you for making this channel such a success, and here's to the next 100,000. All right, it is a very fun show today. We don't just have that exciting news to show you. We got a new segment coming up.
Carl Reed with 24/7 Sport.
That means they don't take breaks if they 24/7.
Around the clock.
What's good for the goose is good for the gander. You in the class of 2024, you better stop playing around and make a decision.
And I go in there with my wife, and Mike Norvell is talking to a bunch of recruits, and he's got it pumping, he's got it going on. I leave the room with Dan Lannon, but my wife stays in the room with Mike Norvell, and I thought she was going to get in the transfer portal.
If they are going to be recruiting every day, you better be working every day, and that's the real deal.
Dr. Reed is like Nate Dogg. You know it's a hit when he spit.
We are so proud to bring you a brand new segment on the College Football Recruiting Show. It's Read Between the Lines with the coach, Carl Reed. You're going to be seeing a lot more of this face. He's always getting hit up, right, for advice. Yeah. I mean, in your DMs and on your phone. And it's a kind of a crazy, ever-changing world of college football. So we're going to start answering some of your questions, the ones that you asked Carl. We're just going to answer them here on the show. So let's start with a common one that you hear from those high school football coaches. They say, you know, I have the best player in the state, but why is he not getting recruited? What would you say to that?
Well, Emily, sometimes just because you have the best player in the state or in your area doesn't necessarily mean that he's a Division I prospect. He can very well be a great player and not be a D1 guy. What I would recommend a high school coach does in every situation, Emily, is talk to the college coaches that are recruiting your school, the guys who consistently come in from your area. They'll tell you exactly what they want. They'll tell you the height they want, the weight they want, the speed they want, and then you have to be fair and evaluate whether your guy meets those qualifications. There's offensive line coaches that won't take a guy that's under 6'5". If your guy isn't 6'5", it doesn't matter if he's stronger than Hercules. They don't have an interest for him. So you have to be fair. You have to be evaluating that and also be honest with your players when you get the feedback and information.
And what advice do you have for those coaches, maybe sitting down and having that tough conversation with a player who, you have the attitude, you have the swagger. If you're one of the best players in the state, there's a certain cachet that comes with that. So from a coaching perspective, what does that conversation look like?
I just think you need to be honest. You need to make sure that you're talking to the young man and saying this is exactly where you stand at in the recruiting process. These are what the coaches at the Division I level are saying. These is what the coaches at the Division II level are saying, and this is how you're being evaluated. I know you want this group of scholarships over here, but you got these ones, so let's look at these.
All right, how about some advice for players? I mean, with all the commitments that we saw in the month of June, nearly 500 commitments, you got all these spots that are filling up. So what should a player's level of concern be about potentially losing a spot that they once had?
You should be very concerned about that. If you have a committable offer right now, then you should look at it. I was talking to a parent on my way into the studio today that has 3 FBS offers, but they're group of 5 offers, and they want to camp still, and they want to look at some of the bigger schools. But you can look up in 10 days, and those be off the table. So you have to look at the schools that are recruiting you, the schools who have really taken an interest in you, and you have to be able to go with that. You have to be willing to go with that. And with the transfer portal, you don't know what's going to change a couple years down the road, but you're 30 or 40 days away from potentially not having a scholarship. You could be 3 days away from it, but the deeper you go in the waiting, those guys are going to start declaring for the transfer portal at the beginning into the middle of the season, and then it's a completely different ball game.
You mentioned the parent whose child has all the offers, but still waiting for that Power 5 offer. What's your advice for those players that might be concerned about taking that G5 offer for NIL reasons?
You shouldn't be concerned about taking a G5 offer. And G5 schools are not set up with the collectives the same way the Power 5 schools are, but there's still a lot of value in getting your education and getting to go to school for free. We've had several players this year who were big-time players at the group of 5 that ended up going in the portal and ended up at Power 5 schools for huge NIL deals. So it's a starting point, but it's not a finishing point. But what you don't want to do is wait so long that you end up with nothing in the end.
Yeah, it's a very delicate balance that you got to play quite right. Let's speak to some of those parents. I mean, what do you say to a parent whose high school doesn't seem to be helping as much with recruiting as maybe they'd like?
A parent needs to understand that the high school coach does not get paid to help your kid get into college. He gets paid to win games. He might also be getting paid to teach a full load of classes during the day. So every high school coach is not very active in the recruiting process the way that some parents may like. But you have to go to camps. You have to be proactive in putting your information out as well. You also, in every area, there's a trainer, or there's another high school coach at another school that has access to a lot of coaches, and those guys are always willing to help. And you don't necessarily have to transfer to their school for them to say positive things about you. Build relationships with everybody in your community that can help you.
What would you say to a parent whose child might not have many Division I offers?
I would say look at the Division II, the FCS, the NAI, look at the lower level schools. A great player that I coached against in high school was Cody Schrader, who's now the starting tailback at the University of Missouri. And he point blank asked me coming out of high school, Coach, do you think I'm a Division I player? I said, Cody, it doesn't matter what I think. I don't have a scholarship to give you. Yeah. Cody goes to Truman State, a Division II school in the state of Missouri. He leads the nation in rushing at the Division II level, goes in the portal, and now he's on a full scholarship in the SEC for the Missouri Tigers, and he's the starting tailback. Those kind of things are happening now with the transfer portal. So go where you're wanted, and then the opportunities will really open up for you.
I love that. Fantastic advice. We want to continue to bring you this great advice from the coach. So be sure to hit you up on Twitter, right? Is that a good place to do it? At Coach Reed Live?
Yep.
All right, and we're gonna answer your questions live on this show. These are just kind of a compilation of some that you've gotten over the years that we all put together. But we would like to have, maybe some tweets, have your name up there. So be sure to hit up Carl online to get some more great advice on Read Between the Lines. Carl, you're the best. Also, you can read more of his work on 247sports.com. And as always, for more exclusive information, become a VIP member. And remember to hit that subscribe button here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube page. Okay, we got a lot of requests in the chat last week to remind you of who's still available after the deluge of commitments in June. So let's reset the recruiting board in the Midwest region. There, you'll see players like Marquis Lightfoot, whose name will not be lasting long on this graphic, as he is set to make his commitment in just minutes. But a lot of guys still available that we want to talk about. So to help us break down this Midwest region, we are welcoming in national recruiting analyst Allen Trieu. Allen, let's start with Aaron Scott out of Ohio, the number 3 corner in the class. And it looks like it's maybe an Ohio State-Michigan battle, which we love to see. A few other schools in the mix here for him. But what's the latest with his recruitment?
Yeah, I would have Oregon in there a little bit as well. But essentially, this is going to be Buckeyes versus Wolverines. They've met on the field many times, and now they're meeting on the recruiting trail more and more. Ohio State just won the battle for cornerback Bryce West, another highly recruited guy out of the state of Ohio, so they got that one. Aaron Scott, though, still going back and forth. He's going to make his decision at the end of this month. I think it's neck and neck between the two schools. Crystal ball favoring Ohio State right now, but we've thought Michigan's been dangerous in this race the whole time. We still continue to think that, and I think this one could go back and forth and continue to be a deliberation process for him right up until that July 30th commitment date.
Let's head to the state of Iowa's number 1 player in that state. 4-star offensive tackle Grant Brix is still on the board. Alabama, Oklahoma, Iowa, Kansas State. Where does his recruitment process stand right now, Allen, as we head into the month of August?
Yeah, he's got some heavy hitters on that list. You mentioned the in-state schools. Iowa and Iowa State recruited him. Alabama and Oklahoma recruited him, scheduled official visits with him. But I actually think this one's going to come down to Nebraska and Kansas State. Both schools have had him on campus for officials. Both schools were just battling it out for another offensive tackle, Caden Massey. Kansas State came out on top on this one. The crystal ball right now favors Kansas State to win out for Grant Brix as well. I still consider the Huskers to be very alive and dangerous in this battle, but am leaning towards Kansas State at this point. That would be 2 really strong bookend tackles for them, 2 guys with huge upside for Chris Kleiman and his crew. So right now, that one's trending towards Kansas State, but still think that there's possibility that some other schools like Nebraska can still make some progress with him.
All right, how about 4-star wide receiver Nick Marsh? He is closing in on his commitment later this week. He was once committed to Michigan State, changed his mind back in March. Spartans not out of it, though, but also in the mix now. You got Penn State, Kansas, Pitt, a few others. Where are you leaning just a few days out?
Yeah, if you had asked me this question a couple weeks ago, I would have said Penn State. If you had asked me last week, I might have said Pitt or Kansas. Now I'm leaning more towards Michigan State, and that would be a rarity. Most recruits who decommit from a school don't go back to the same school, but I think the Spartans have a real chance to pull that off here with Nick. He's an in-state guy. He just took, they got the last official visit from him. He just took that one with his mother, came back and said, you know, the same type of love and feeling he's had all along from them that made him commit in the first place, that's still there. That's never changed. And so I would start to favor Michigan State to get him back in the class this Friday. I think the school to watch out there other than the Spartans, though, is Pitt. I think that's the strongest competition for him right now. They've done a nice job in the Midwest and in the state of Michigan. Archie Collins, their cornerbacks coach, is a Detroit native and has done a really good job in that area. So Panthers remain dangerous, but I like Michigan State's chances here as of today.
Finally, Allen, 4-star tight end Tavian Galloway came off the board early in the process, backed off that LSU commitment in early June, has taken some official visits. Where do things stand with him, as he's one of the best tight ends in the country that's still available?
Yeah, really good athlete, 4-star guy, and has taken some official visits and maybe some schools that people wouldn't have expected after his decommitment from LSU. He took one to UCF. He went down to Purdue. He went to Syracuse. I think any of those schools are possibilities right now. I know some schools like Arizona State and others are still in the mix. I think the Boilers are a school to watch. They're in the Big Ten. They throw the ball. They've done a really good job at recruiting the tight end position. I really liked what they did at that spot last year. So I would watch out for them. But Tavian's a kid who marches to the beat of his own drum. So I could see him leaving the region and going to a school that's off the beaten path. But right now with Purdue and Syracuse getting those last 2 officials, those are the schools to watch.
All right, Allen, thanks for keeping us updated. Sit tight. We'll welcome you back in a bit, but we have something very important that we have to do on this show. The number 8 pass rusher in the class, Marquis Lightfoot, the 6'5", 220-pound Chicago native, collected 122 tackles, 9 sacks, and a forced fumble for Kenwood Academy this past fall. Where will he be playing his college ball? We are about to find out. Let's welcome in the man of the hour, Marquis Lightfoot. We are so glad to have you on the show today. But before we get to your commitment, what were some important factors for you going into your decision?
The three things I made sure looking forward going into my commitment was how I'm going to be developed, how much I am a priority to the establishment, and how I'm going to live my life for the next 3 to 4 years.
Marquise, we see a good group of people there in the bleachers in that studio room, and no prospect is able to get to this point alone. Who are some of those folks that are around you that you have to thank?
First off, I want to thank my mom right here to my left. I want to thank my head coach. I want to thank my position coach. I want to thank the whole coaching staff, my teammates in the 21, 22, and 23 class that already graduated before me. I also want to thank the coaches that have been recruiting me since I was a sophomore, everyone that gave me a chance to be great, and my high school principal sitting behind me right here, Ms. Calloway, and
I love it. I love it. There's so many people to thank, but there's a lot of people waiting to find out where you're headed, so let's waste no more time. Marquise, you have the floor. Where are you going?
With that being said, I would like to announce my commitment to the University of Miami.
Wow, congratulations. I don't know where you're hiding all that stuff. That is fantastic. I actually have some confetti in the studio here I'm going to throw out for you, but man, you got me beat. What an announcement. I got to ask, I mean, what stood out about Miami and Mario Cristobal's program that led to your commitment?
So like I said, the three things I went in my recruitment looking for, all those schools really covered that. I didn't think about Miami was about everyone. It was it showed me that I was a real fit there, and everyone was, I was comfortable being there. I didn't have to act like someone else. I was myself. When I went in my first visit there, I knew that that was a place I wanted to be. My second visit there, on my official visit, I kind of made sure that everything was right. With my position coach being a Hall of Famer, Coach Jason Taylor, my deep tackle hand in hand with my position coach, my head coach being someone who knows what it takes to go get the dub. So Miami.
Marquise, you have a lot of Miami fans there around you now, a lot of Miami fans watching. What do you have to say to them about the type of player that the Hurricanes are getting at the next level?
Y'all are getting a player with a relentless motor. I will forever chase the ball, and I'm gonna get it done for y'all.
I love it. Marquise, congratulations. Soak it all in. Thank you so much for allowing us to be a part of your special day. I'm sure the work is just beginning. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. You too. Appreciate it.
All right, there you have it. 4-star edge Marquis Lightfoot has picked the U. You heard him say it there. We want to talk a little bit more about this commitment. I mean, another massive win for Miami already, just win after win on their recruiting trail. You see all of those 4 stars in tow. I see a lot of guys on the defensive side of the ball. So let's bring back in our friend Allen Trieu to talk a little bit more about this latest commitment. Miami, the big winner for 4-star edge Marquis Lightfoot. You heard him say it's pretty cool when your position coach is a former Hall of Famer, but how else were they able to win this battle?
Well, he's had multiple good visits there. I think the official really sold it, though. And he did talk about Jason Taylor helps. It's the same position. It's a position that Jason Taylor really helped to pioneer, and he's talked about that multiple times, I know. But he really liked Coach Cristobal. He liked Joe Salavea. So there were multiple members of that staff that really made him feel like a priority. And then I think being able to get him on campus, he talked about the surroundings at Coral Gables. He talked about the international flavor and the opportunities that could present him outside of football and in NIL. And so there were multiple prongs here that helped Miami land him, which as of a week ago, even a few days ago, this was Ohio State. Miami came on strong at the end and were able to defeat the Buckeyes. Ohio State beat Miami for Justin Scott yesterday, so they're kind of trading blows with Chicago defensive linemen right now.
A huge comeback effort there for Mario Cristobal. Allen, we have him listed at 6'5", 220. Marquis Lightfoot is the number 8 edge rusher in this 2024 class. As you project him to the next level, how quickly do you think he could get on the field for the Hurricanes and make an impact?
Yeah, I think he has a chance to be a really, really good player. I mean, the upside there is tremendous. I do think that he has a chance to play earlier than expected because he's improved so much over the course of the last couple of years. His trajectory's gone way up. He's taken to the weight room. He's added the weight necessary. I think that'll be the biggest piece in him playing early is how quickly can that 220 get to 235 to 240 to 250. I think that will determine how quickly he can play for them. But he brings a trait right away that can get him on the field, which is he can rush the passer in passing situations. And I think the kid has really grown a lot in the last year, not just physically, but in terms of his technique and his approach to the game. So best football's ahead of him, but I think it could come sooner than most people think.
Looking forward to it. Allen, thank you so much. All my Miami fans in the chat right now, be sure to check out Inside the U for more on this commitment and the inevitable future commitments to come. Again, that's InsideTheU.com. Now it's time to answer your viewer questions, and man, we need to pay whoever is in charge of going through the chat right now a little bit more, because my goodness, you guys have been hitting it up fast and furious. A lot of people very excited about the commitment today. But Blair, I have to start off with a question to you, because turns out you were telling the truth. You did go to Miami for work this weekend. What stood out to you about the ESPN 300 event there?
It was the alpha dog, Houston Kahahaina Torres. He's the number 1 rated offensive lineman in that camp. You see him there. I mean, the camera work, Emily, out in Maui, I was distracted, but I was able to manage to get this film. He was so electric as a pass blocker, really dominant in one-on-one drills with a strong punch, quick feet, was really balanced, and he punched his ticket to the 2025 Under Armour All-America game. He was one of the offensive line MVPs. So Houston Kahahaina Torres from St. Louis School in Honolulu, one to watch in the 2025 class out west.
I love it. That is some beautiful camera work. I'm surprised it didn't just drift upwards toward the beautiful blue skies and the scenery and the palm trees. It did seem like a very exciting event this weekend. Thank you for the heads up. Okay, we got a question here from Morris Jones asking, what do you do? I love this question because I think he asked it before the most recent Miami win here. But what do you do if you're Coach Cristobal and you're missing out on some 5-star targets? What's your advice?
I think you have to keep at it, right? First comes the commitment and then comes the flip. You can't have one before the other. So that's the motto. That's, I think, what Miami has to continue to do. And then second, you have to show some glimpses. You have to turn things around on the field. Not the greatest season in 2022. They hope that 2023 is a little bit different on the field with results. They have some big opportunities against some non-conference opponents. They have to, I think, take strides within the ACC as well and show that, hey, look, we are now in year 2 and we have a bit of our own guys on campus, maybe a roster that's a little bit better in terms of how we're hoping to structure it. And that's, I think, the missing ingredient for Miami right now when they are selling to 5-star recruits specifically. You heard Marquis Lightfoot talk about Jason Taylor and what they hope to do on the defensive side of the ball. I think that's another thing that Miami has to do is just, hey, look, these are some examples of what we're going to do. This is what we want to accomplish on the field, and you're going to be a big part of that.
Exactly. I mean, they've nailed the summer sell. It's that fall sell that's still waiting for, but certainly a lot of big wins for Miami. The past one today on the show. Got another question here from Andrew asking, how about Justin Williams? Is he still an Oregon lean or is he looking elsewhere?
Well, our director of recruiting, Steve Wiltfong, had a tremendous report at the end of June, right after Justin Williams took that official visit to Georgia. And it does seem like it's either Dan Lanning or Dan Lanning's former school for one of the best linebackers in this class, the 5-star out of the state of Texas. could be headed to either coast. Right now, it does look like a Georgia-Oregon battle. The crystal ball still remains on the Ducks to land him, but watch out for the Bulldogs. That is the exact words from Steve Wiltfong in that VIP article, and that's going to be, I think, one that those two schools continue to really duke it out for all the way leading up to the early signing period in December.
Well, when Blair isn't giving away the VIP information, usually you gotta subscribe to that. So be sure to be a VIP member today. It's very easy, very inexpensive, and you get great nuggets of information like that. Watch out for the Bulldogs. I got one more question here from Mile High Pride 94. Where do things stand with Brandon Baker coming out of his official visits?
That's another school right now, or another player that it seems like Oregon is making the most noise. He did take some officials. I think this is a player who I think wants to take his time a little bit and wants to feel things out with some other schools and kind of figure out what's going to happen on the field and maybe where he fits in. But, you know, we had Greg Biggins on this show last week, and he mentioned that the connections with the offensive line staff, Oregon has 3 offensive line coaches that kind of team up together and do a lot of the heavy lifting. And then you think about what Dan Lanning is doing on the recruiting front and, you know, the opportunity to go in there and make an impact, as well as the family connections. His brother played at Oregon. I think that gives the Ducks the upper hand right now as we approach kind of the last couple weeks of this dead period. So Oregon, I think, is a school that a lot of the other programs are chasing right now for Brandon Baker, but there is still, I think, some time for a lot of these other suitors to make up ground.
The #1 offensive tackle in the class, 5-star. We're still tracking a lot of these commitments, and we're going to continue to bring you updates on some of the biggest uncommitted prospects in the coming weeks. But Blair, I got some business to attend to. I have confetti all around me, and I'm the one that's got to clean it up. So I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye, but thank you again for getting us to 100,000 subscribers. Could not have done it without you, and here's to the next 100,000. For Blair Angulo, I'm Emily Proud, and this is the College Football Recruiting Show.